on this Saturday night. Pope Francis in peril. The elderly Pontiff now in critical condition in hospital. What we know so far about his health after a week of struggling with illness. An emotional homecoming as 6 hostages are handed over by Hamas. But Israel's delay in its release of Palestinian prisoners is adding stress to an already unsteady ceasefire. The foreign interference fears in the German federal election as parties enter the final push. And pond hockey puck drop.
They got teams coming from all over the world.
How a beloved tradition is back in a small New Brunswick community and the massive effort to make it happen.
Global National, reporting tonight. Nitu Karcha.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. We begin with breaking news out of Rome tonight, where the Pope's health has deteriorated. After more than a week in hospital, the Vatican says the 88-year-old Pontiff is now in critical condition. In a statement, the Vatican said the Holy Father's condition continues to be critical and that he suffered an asthma-like respiratory crisis of prolonged intensity, which required the administration of high-flow oxygen. It goes on to say he is not out of danger. Pope Francis has been undergoing treatment for double pneumonia and a complex respiratory infection. The faithful are holding prayers outside Rome's Gemelli Hospital, where the Pope is being treated, and outside the Vatican, where officials say Pope Francis has received blood transfusions after tests which showed a condition linked to anemia.
I'm literally worried about his state of health, literally, and I'm just being worried about his health, and I hope he will recover. Definitely, he will. Come back to his health soon. Definitely.
In his home city of Buenos Aires, a towering monument in the center of the capital lit up the night sky with the words, "Francis, the city prays for you," on one side and a portrait of the Pope on the other. The Vatican says the Pope remains alert and spent the day in an armchair, although in more pain than yesterday. It's also spoken out against what it calls useless speculation over the Pope's future, saying the only thing that matters is the health of Francis, his recovery, and the return to the Vatican. In the Middle East, Hamas is slamming Israel for postponing the release of hundreds of Palestinians in what was supposed to be the largest prisoner hostage swap under a ceasefire agreement. Late tonight, Israel said it will not be freeing some 620 prisoners until the release of the next Israeli hostages is guaranteed. The statement comes hours after their release was supposed to happen. Earlier today, 6 Israeli hostages were released by Hamas. They're the last group of living hostages designated for transfer under the existing deal. David Akin reports.
Omer Shemtov, held hostage by Hamas for more than 500 days, is reunited with his parents. The friends and family of hostage Omar Wenkert watched his release on live television. Shemtov, Wenkart, and one other hostage were released to the Red Cross in a heavily choreographed ceremony in central Gaza on Saturday. The Red Cross then handed over the released hostages to the Israeli army for their return to Israel and those joyful reunions with family. A similar elaborate ceremony was held elsewhere in Gaza for 2 other hostages, one of whom, Avera Mengitsu, had been held captive by Hamas for more than a decade. Altogether, 6 hostages were returned to Israel Saturday.
We are at the end of an emotionally complex week.
For its part, Israel is to release about 600 Palestinian detainees, most of which were caught and held after Israeli forces invaded Gaza. Families and friends of captured Palestinians gathered at a hospital in Khan Yunis to greet them. Hours after the release of the Israeli hostages, though, Israel had yet to release the Palestinian detainees. Under the terms of the Israel-Hamas ceasefire, this exchange is to be followed by the release next week of the remains of 4 hostages who perished, and that will complete the first phase of the terms of the Israel-Hamas ceasefire. But both sides will try to extend that ceasefire by negotiating new conditions. Israel wants the return of 63 other hostages or their remains. Hamas on Saturday said it is prepared to release all hostages, alive or dead, but the price it wants Israel to pay? The complete withdrawal of Israeli troops from Gaza. David Akin, Global News.
In France, one person has been killed and at least 2 police officers seriously injured in a stabbing attack in the eastern city of Mulhouse. Police arrested a 37-year-old Algerian man who, according to reports, was shouting "God is great" in Arabic as he went after the officers. The local prosecutor saying the man had been on a terrorism watch list. The deceased is a civilian who tried to intervene.
Im Holocaust waren mal tatsächlich Juden zu attackieren.
Prosecutors in Berlin say a 19-year-old Syrian refugee is alleged to have carried out a near-fatal stabbing at the city's famed Holocaust Memorial on Friday. The victim, a 30-year-old Spanish tourist, is undergoing emergency surgery but is expected to recover. It is alleged the suspect told police after his arrest he had intended to kill Jews. It's also alleged there was a Quran, a prayer rug, and a 20-centimeter hunting knife inside his backpack. News that a refugee from Syria may have been behind a terrorist attack comes just a day before Germany's parliamentary elections. The far-right AfD party has tried to capitalize on fears over migration, but the election has also been shaped by concerns over foreign interference. All this as the fate of Europe's biggest economy hangs in the balance. Our Redmond Shannon is in Berlin again for us tonight. Redmond?
Neetu, Germany is the European Union's largest economy, but it is stuck in a 2-year recession. So how its somewhat disgruntled people vote tomorrow could shape Europe's future.
The AfD.
A video apparently showing the shredding of mail-in ballots. German authorities say these envelopes are the wrong shape and colour. They say this latest fake is part of an ongoing wave of disinformation coordinated in Russia, using bots and cloned news websites, targeting Germany's elections and lawmakers. There was the fake news story of a migration deal to bring almost 2 million Kenyans to Germany, and false claims Germany's foreign minister had an affair with a Nigerian sex worker.
We're talking about social media platforms which have a wide reach.
Cornelius Adebar is a candidate for a small Liberal party and works at a non-profit that counters disinformation.
It's just the sheer volume of false information being out there, which creates an information environment where people don't trust anymore. And that is what is harmful for democracy and for the electoral process.
After Twitter rebranded as X, the ability to analyse its data and find suspicious activity was locked behind a paywall.
For non-profit organizations like us, this is just not very sustainable or feasible.
Duncan Allen says his Berlin-based group is suing X under European law to get the data.
It will set a precedent that other organizations can then use to, again, apply for similar access under.
German concerns about election interference are not just focused on Russia. There are increasing worries about the effects of meddling coming from Washington.
It's okay to be proud to be German. This is a very important principle.
Ex-owner and Trump confidant Elon Musk recently came out in support of the far-right AfD party.
He's so totally on the right wing.
Jewish German Sasha says Musk's involvement in the campaign just days after giving that one-armed gesture is difficult to take.
So we have to take care, and we have to vote on Sunday.
Whatever happens tomorrow, the AfD will not be in government because the other parties refuse to join it in a coalition government, meaning the more likely outcome is a familiar coalition of parties closer to the centre. Neetu?
All right, Redmond Shannon in Berlin. Thanks, Redmond. The Trump administration's frenetic purge of key government institutions is showing no sign of slowing down. In a post on X, Elon Musk, who heads the Department of Government Efficiency, said all federal employees will receive an email requesting to understand what they got done last week, and that failure to respond will be taken as a resignation. It follows President Trump taking aim at the Pentagon Friday, firing top military figures, including America's most senior commander. Candice Cole reports.
We confirm Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth to end the woke insanity and rebuild our military.
In President Trump's latest move in his war against woke, General Charles C.Q. Brown was terminated as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. In a post on Truth Social Friday, Trump thanked General Brown for his 40 years of service, calling him a, quote, fine gentleman and an outstanding leader, and plans to replace General Brown with retired three-star General Dan Caine. Brown, whose ouster comes in the middle of Black History Month, is only the second Black officer to hold the role. His term was set to end in 2027. Brown has been criticized by the Trump administration for his commitment to supporting diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives in the military.
And notified every single government DEI officer that their job has been deleted.
During his confirmation hearing for Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth said senior officers would be evaluated based on their merits and other standards, but questioned Brown's legitimacy in his book, asking whether Brown got the top job because he's Black. Shortly after Brown's firing, the former Fox News personality announced plans to get rid of Admiral Lisa Franchetti, the first woman to ever lead the Navy, and General James Slife, number 2 in command over the Air Force. Last month, Trump fired Admiral Linda Fagan, the first woman in charge of the Coast Guard. Democrats say the firings weaken and endanger the nation. Republican lawmakers are now facing backlash from their constituents over the administration's hacksaw approach to cutting the federal workforce.
Because we are all freaking pissed off about this.
And the Pentagon announced plans to cut 5,400 probationary jobs next week, followed by a hiring freeze.
God bless America.
Candice Cole, Global News, Washington.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau spoke with President Trump today ahead of a virtual G7 meeting on Monday. The Prime Minister's office says Trudeau updated Trump on Canadian efforts to combat fentanyl smuggling through the Canada-U.S. border and noted seizures of fentanyl along the border have decreased. This week, the federal government designated a number of drug cartels as terrorist groups in order to help support those efforts. As Mercedes Stevenson reports, although the groups are far more prominent south of the U.S., they're a growing concern here at home. Mercedes?
Neithu, drug cartels, many of which are based in Mexico, are notorious for using brutal violence, having merciless demands for loyalty and compliance, and for fueling toxic drug supplies, human trafficking, and crime. While many Canadians may imagine them to mostly be a problem for the United States and Latin America given the geography, Canadian national security experts have raised concerns that those cartels are operating here in Canada more and more. On Thursday, the government designated 7 drug cartels as terrorist groups, changing the rules and tools that law enforcement will have to fight them. The move comes after Donald Trump designated cartels as terrorist groups in the United States, as that country wrestles with an escalating cartel problem. Now the American military's special operations forces will be involved in fighting them. A significant step to deal with the criminal syndicates that often possess advanced military capabilities themselves. This week on the West Block, I asked the Prime Minister's former National Security and Intelligence Advisor about the activity of the cartels here in Canada and whether the terror designation will make a difference.
The problems are moving north. The gun problem is moving north. The fentanyl problem exists here. And I would say that 10, 15, 20 years ago, we would not have used the word cartel with regard to activity in Canada, but it's very prevalent.
And you can watch more of Mercedes' conversation with Jody Thomas tomorrow morning on the West Block, right here on Global. Promises from Ontario party leaders coming up as early votes are cast where candidates are spending the final week of the provincial election campaign. Ontario's progressive conservative frontrunner and current Premier Doug Ford is vowing to deliver on a long-standing promise, if elected, to finally develop Northern Ontario's Ring of Fire region. It's thought to contain huge reserves of lucrative critical minerals. His opponents, however, spent the final day of advance voting before next Thursday's provincial election to highlight uncomfortably long healthcare wait times and the ever-rising cost of living. Here's Lexi Benedict.
PC leader Doug Ford in Northern Ontario on Saturday, where he promised to speed up project approvals to mine critical minerals in the Ring of Fire region of the province.
But to protect Ontario, to give us maximum leverage on global stage, we have to get our critical minerals out of the ground, processed and shipped to the factory floors here in northern Ontario and across the province.
He also promised on Saturday to put more money into programs aimed at boosting First Nations participation in projects in several sectors, including mining. While the Greens were in Kitchener today, making promises to support Gen Z.
And it starts by eliminating interest on all student loans and changing the Ontario Student Assistance Program from being loans to grants.
The plan also includes reducing youth mental health wait times and decreasing the voting age to 16. NDP leader Mart Stiles in Scarborough today, reiterating her plans to fight the rising cost of living.
Groceries are so expensive, and we see that in the numbers of people that I talked about, the 75,000 people that are going to food banks here. So we are going to make sure that people get every month a check from the government, your money back, to help you cover the cost of those groceries.
Liberal leader Bonnie Crombie didn't have any scheduled events today, instead making an appearance in Mississauga to cast her ballot.
And while party leaders spent their weekend on the campaign trail, many Ontarians spent their Saturday casting their ballots early, with advanced polling stations closing today.
Advanced polling, we wanted to avoid the lines, and it seemed like a good day, so last day, well, let's get out.
It was an easy decision, however, I still did my homework. Well, I know who I'm not voting for.
Polling stations will reopen at 9 a.m. on Election Day this Thursday and will stay open until 9 p.m. Lexi Benedict, Global News, Toronto.
Postpartum diabetes ahead, why a new study says most women aren't getting the care they need, and the advice to new moms and their physicians. Hypertension or diabetes during pregnancy can be relatively common, but a new study finds few women receive proper follow-up care after delivery, even though those conditions can increase the risk of heart disease and stroke. Global's Catherine Ward explains what new moms and their doctors need to know.
I think sometimes it's assumed that because guidelines are there, people would be following them.
But Dr. Amy Yu explains that's not always the case, and that she's concerned that postpartum screening for people who develop diabetes or hypertension during pregnancy is falling through the cracks too often.
We know that people who have high blood pressure and high sugar during pregnancy are at higher risk of heart disease and stroke after the pregnancy ends.
Researchers from ICES and Sunnybrook Health Sciences Centre in Toronto studied more than 1 million pregnancies between 2002 and 2019.
Ideally, people who have had these complications during pregnancy should undergo the screening so that women can be aware if they're a higher risk of having a stroke or heart disease and take the step to reduce these risks.
But the data shows only 17% of people who had gestational diabetes or hypertension were screened in the year following pregnancy. Just 44% received those tests within 3 years. Registered dietitian Karen Fung says it's easy for new parents to overlook their own health.
The focus is on babies, so when a mother goes in to their family doctor for their 6-week postpartum check, it's often talking about the baby and not about the mom's health.
It's been like 3 months since we last saw you.
Fung and nurse Lee Kaplan help run postpartum classes at Sunnybrook. Their work helps address the screening gap and identify red flags early.
Gestational diabetes goes away, but 50% of women, so if you think of a class of 10, 5 of those women will go on to either have prediabetes or diabetes.
This team hopes greater awareness among patients, obstetricians, and family doctors will result in more people getting screened and reduce the risk of complications.
So if we can prevent that, if we can get people healthy and look at lifestyle changes, then hopefully we can keep their lives healthier and living longer and healthier lives.
Catherine Ward, Global News, Toronto.
Pond hockey pride. Next, how the sport is bringing together teams from around the world in a small New Brunswick town. We've been talking a lot about hockey rivalry in recent days, but what about pond hockey? Well, that's about as Canadian as it gets. After being cancelled last year due to unseasonably warm weather, the World Championships are back. Johnny James takes us to the tournament being staged by a small but mighty New Brunswick community.
After a year away, the World Pond Hockey Championships have returned, a staple event in the community of Plaster Rock, New Brunswick, which President Danny Braun says brings more than just an economic stimulus to the area.
It's a small town, around 1,000 people, and we probably got close to 200 volunteers that touch the event in some way. And you know, those that aren't are probably too old or too young, and the others working in the service industry that support it in other ways.
Last year, temperatures were too warm, leaving the event unable to proceed due to a lack of ice on Rollston Lake. But this year, despite not being able to begin preparations until just under 3 weeks out, Braun says his crew pulled together a big effort to make the event happen.
They take a lot of pride in what they do, and you know that's very evident when you see the commitment level they have. I mean, this morning we had guys out here at 6 a.m. shaving the ice, basically still in the dark with some help from the lights we have.
80 teams have made the journey from various parts inside and outside Canada, including the Czech Republic, Slovakia, and Dubai. Craig Roach's team, Howard's Camp, from Johnston's River, Prince Edward Island, is one of the event's original teams, playing in their 21st tournament. He says it was sorely missed.
It's second to none around this region. They got teams coming from all over the world, so that should give you enough reason. The reputation that it has is very, very good.
And adds the tournament is important not only to the community of Plaster Rock, but the one built by those who come together year after year.
You talk to people that you hadn't seen since this time last year, and you catch up with them, have a beer with them, just have a good time. Hopefully you get to play a game against them.
The tournament wraps up with its playoffs and championship games tomorrow. Johnny James, Global News, Plaster Rock, New Brunswick.
Great to see the games go on. That is Global National for this Saturday night. I'm Neetu Garcha. Tonight's Your Canada is chilly Saskatoon. Thanks so much for watching and hope you'll join us again tomorrow. Have a great night.